This class is for the reflashtam of my Rabbi, the Halevy Rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Taub, Rabbi Moshe Ben Rezel. He should have reflashtam in all of his body and his everything. He should be well and healthy, and we should only know reflashtam for him. May I ask that you down if you got him to your list, Rabbi Moshe Ben Rezel.
Amen.
Yeah.
In the Parsha on Shabbat, it said Vayimshol Aliyah.
V'hu yimshol ba.
V'hu yimshol. In contrast to that, and he will rule her. Man will rule woman. Imshol. So the question was, what does the word imshol mean actually? In contrast to God created male, female, and male is a man is not a man without a woman. So, imshol in contrast to male, female.
There's a book on my shelf called Re'im Ahuvim, which is it's a book written by Rabbi Shlomo Aviner on shidduchim, on dating, and in there, maybe it's in this book or it's in a different book, but Melech of his, but Rabbi Aviner, he was asked by a lady who said that her husband, every time he tells her to do something, he says you have to do because it says in the Torah, "V'hu yimshol bach," that he will rule over you. So she asked, is he right? It says in the Torah that he will rule over his wife. The very simple answer here, if you read the verse in context, it's a curse. It's not a blessing. It's not a good thing. Hashem is to the world. Hashem is cursing the world, that the world will be ingrained with his notion that a man will rule over a woman. It's not a good thing. It's not a blessing. It's not something that Hashem wants. Hashem is saying, this is part of the curse. You want to perpetuate the curse, that's your fault. In Judaism, it's not a value. There's no such thing as a man ruling over a woman. And it's like Hashem, cursed Chava, that when she would leave the garden, she would have all kinds of suffering while she was giving birth, and so on and so forth. Adam, bizat apecha tochalachem, that he will have to work and sweat in order to have food to eat. Parnasah will be a hard thing. It's not just going to come into your front door. All of these things, it's in this sequence of things. Hashem is saying, you chose to take life out of the Garden of Eden, so this is how life is going to be for you. It's not the way Hashem wanted the world to be, and it's not the way Hashem wants the world to be. And therefore, the whole notion that somebody will be moshel over a woman is not a correct... It's a curse. Hashem was cursing mankind. Why? It's an interesting question, why? But he was cursing mankind. It's not something we wish to continue. And you see that over history, that seems to be the way it was for a long time.
Correct.
And thank God it's not like that anymore, at least not in most places.
Well,
I don't know.
That was actually one question that I was going to say, because there's other religion that, does it come from there? Does the Quran take
Right, that's what I was going to ask about the Quran.
I don't know what the Quran is really into ruling over a woman, whereas you don't find that in our Torah. You don't find later in the Torah makes references to a man being an owner over a woman. You don't find such a thing.
Baal. Why? Baal is actually kind of a Baal shel Isha. Baal translates to the master of the woman. She become kind of ani Baal shulchan hazeh, ani Baal shel Isha zo. So actually,
yeah, but there is also a lot of women in the Torah that they have their own say and they have their power.
Okay.
Okay, so Abraham is the Baal of Sarah. Yeah?
Yeah.
But Hashem tells Abraham, Kol asher tomar lecha Sarah ishtecha shema b'kola. Everything Sarah, your wife, tells you, you must listen to her. Says Rashi, Sarah had more Ruach HaKodesh than did Avraham Avinu. She had more divine providence than did Avraham. So what does that mean? So is he really her Baal? Whether Baal is the Hebrew word that refers to a husband, and Isha is the Hebrew word that refers to a wife.
Then why do Orthodox men not wear wedding rings?
You don't?
What is it?
That's just a...
What did you?
Because they don't. And isn't it because the
Orthodox don't wear
the woman is marrying the man, but it's not. There's something about it.
Practically, a man gives a lady a ring. Didn't used to be a ring. In Jewish tradition, rings are not a Jewish custom. It used to be a man would give her money, a coin. In the Yemenite tradition, when you marry a lady, you give her coins. or gold coin, or so I'm marrying you with this coin. The Zohar comes up with this idea that a ring is on the outside of your hand and on the inside of your hand, and something about the outside worlds, the inner worlds, and the Zohar comes up with this idea of a ring. And that became mainstream to the Jewish tradition. But it's not really practically why does a lady wear a ring? Since Jews started using rings, the lady's the one who received the ring. Men don't wear rings for a simple reason that in Jewish society, men don't wear jewelry. And just like in Jewish society, men don't wear skirts. It could be that in Scotland they do, but not in America.
During the chuppah, the man gives the ring to the woman,
right,
but the woman doesn't give the ring to the man.
Right. And so, in this case, it was just the reason why a man doesn't wear a ring. It's a very simple reason why a man doesn't wear earrings either, because it's a beged isha, it's something that a lady wears. And men don't wear clothes that ladies wear, and ladies don't wear clothes that men wear. If you lived in a place where men did wear rings, it could be that it's okay for a man to wear a ring. And I had a friend of mine, young rabbi, very, very dynamic speaker, a charismatic guy. He used to work with a lot of youth groups, British youth groups. And he had a hard time because he was young, he was clean-shaven, and the girls always thought that he was single. And they would always, it's a teenager group. They were always trying to start up with him. And so he told his wife that he wants to grow a beard. He'll grow a beard, they'll know that he's married, and they'll leave him alone. So he grew a beard, and she didn't like it. And so she made him shave off his beard. Shave off his beard, the problem started again. Over and over and over and over again. And so, finally came to have parents. And the parents said, fine, if your wife doesn't want you to have a beard, so wear a ring. As a rabbi, I live in Beit Shemesh. I live in a very religious neighborhood. How can I get away with wearing a ring? So your parents said, who's more important to you? Your wife or the people in your neighborhood? Ever since then, this rabbi wears a ring. And that was the answer to my parents. So it's not that men don't wear a ring. It just, in most Orthodox Jewish circles, men don't wear rings. And therefore it would be possible that that's why men don't wear rings either. To fit in with society norms.
It's more maybe, say for instance, a faux pas.
Oh, that is.
It's like against. It's not recognized.
Yeah, it's a. Yeah. You'll find there were times in history where men did wear rings, didn't wear rings. Right now in Orthodox Jewish society, most men don't wear rings. It's not such a big deal for men.
But it's not illegal to wear a ring.
No.
Right.
No.
It's worse to wear an earring than a ring, obviously. That's a different. That has a very different connotation.
Could be. It all depends where you live, what you do. Everything comes with its own.
And there's no right or wrong. Is there?
Some things. Yeah. Some things not. If a man were to wear a skirt, he wouldn't be allowed to do that. Well, right? So there's just certain things that are no's and certain things that are societal norms.
Well,
right, so in a Hasidic society, I don't know if too many men would be wearing purple shirts.
Today, yes.
So it's the same thing.
Well, for example, I was having a discussion with my wife. In Sephardic countries, ladies didn't wear stockings. They wore sandals and skirts and dresses, whatever. That was how they dressed. In Eastern European society, ladies always wore socks, stockings, whatever it was. When Orthodox Jewry was established in this country, and in Israel, it was pretty much established by the Eastern European Jews. Pretty much. To the point where that establishment seems to be very ignorant of any other kind of Jewish group that's outside of their spectrum. And so it comes that today an Orthodox Jewish girl has to wear stockings. And that's the truth. That's in every place, that's what the rule is.
Even Sephardic?
Yeah. But it is. That's practically the way the rules work. So the question was, by Sfaradim, it's true that a Sephardic girl does not have to wear stockings. But if she would move to a place where all Orthodox girls wear stockings, she would have to also, because these things they're not laws, they're not halachot. They have to do with being a part of the Jewish society and where you live. Could be the same would be for a man about dress or shirt colors or whatever.
Right.
I think that we live in a world today where dress is meaning less and less and less. And there's a lot of bad that comes with that, a lot of lack of dress and things like that, but a lot of good in which you don't necessarily have to dress a certain way to be a certain person in this world. And it's a nice thing. It's a liberating experience for much of the world. And part of that is that this discussion is a little bit irrelevant in other places. Maybe in our community it is, but in other places, when you go somewhere and you dress differently, that's not considered so strange. Remember when I went to get engaged? So I was walking to my engagement party. I was wearing a backpack. For whatever reason, in Borough Park, most men don't walk around with backpacks. Whatever. It's not stylish. I don't know what it is. So everyone looked at me like, oh, he's not from here.
Yeah.
He's not from Borough Park. So it doesn't mean you can't wear backpacks in Borough Park. What it means is that when you wear a backpack in Borough Park, you're making a statement, I'm not from here. And the question is, if you want to integrate into that community, you can't make a statement and then wonder why no one wants you in their society. So Jewish tradition is suggesting when you go somewhere, give up on the trivial things, such as dress, to retain your identity. You don't give up on yourself, you just give up on the things that are outside trappings of yourself.
The reason for the stop was because it was so cold.
Could be. Could also be that in Europe they were a little bit more...
Well, they had to cover themselves, the
It was
shramle.
so cold.
That's what the shramle
What about the summer?
What about the summer? What about the summer? Okay, I understand winter. But today they do. Today they do.
Today.
They wore stockings in the summer too.
They do, yeah.
European dress was always very, very
Proper. More formal.
formal and not fitting to temperature seasons. Like the British soldiers who came to America and were still dressed the same way they were fighting in Europe.
Proper.
It's the same thing. In Sephardic countries, if you would like, you couldn't walk around wearing a long black coat all day long. You can't survive, I don't know, a Yemenite summer when you're running around in a long black coat. It's just not going to work out for you. So people wore white, and people wore one layer, people wore all kinds of things, because that's just the way you have to dress to get around. Similar to why certain Hasidim wore boots. They wore boots because they lived in the Russian gulag and they had to march around with boots. Doesn't mean that today in New York they have to walk around with boots, but they're not asking me. Right then.
Exactly. That is because of the climate, because of the way they
Absolutely.
they live there for hundreds of years, so you just have to adjust.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
But
interesting.
go ahead.
No, it's interesting you're bringing up the subject of clothing, male, female. I was just listening that there's a debate in the New York Times about not having a difference between male and female. So when a baby is born, we're going on the birth certificate. We're just continuing, call it to evolve or to be, to come to a destruction. So it's discrimination now. It's coming up, what's discrimination?
Well, what's the problem?
Discrimination between, if you actually say this is male and female.
And the
so
birth
babies
certificate,
born, don't brand them. Don't brand them as male, female.
Don't check male or female.
Listen, there was a time where people didn't have birth certificates, and they still knew if they were male or female.
Right.
I don't know what the big deal is.
It's Meshuggah.
Yes, it is absolutely.
It's
People are
Fine,
saying-
but if it bothers somebody, so let them. Fine. I don't know. I'm not convinced that we, especially Jews, we get so worked up about what goes on in this country and the rules and the laws. And at the end of the day, nobody's asking you. It's their country. They outnumber you by 1,000,000 to 1. Just be quiet and live your own life and do what it is you need to do.
I agree.
You can't tell the majority of this country how they should live your life because we have a religion that is not theirs. I disagree.
Well, some of those peoples are actually Jewish professors.
Well, that I believe, because Jewish
They
people
are bringing
are
it
always the first people to get rid of
They
Jewish
change
life.
things.
That part I believe in it.
Who bought reform? Jews did, and look where it took us to. Gays, to get married to one another. So, and it's just continuing to get to the, and this is among Jews, and we are getting assimilated to this population.
Well, what is the worst? That's the worst enemy of Jews has always been.
Absolutely.
It's the peacetime.
Yeah.
When it's peaceful for Jews, when Jews can
bored.
That's when we get assimilated, and that's when problems come.
It's not so great for us when there's war either,
No.
Well, yeah, but true. But it's like it's more general. God forbid, unfortunately, when any problem arises, we get united.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. But let's see, now when it was the tunnel war in Israel, see, most people were united. And then, now...
So I question if that's really considered unity.
Well, that's true. There's
That's a good question. It's true.
And during the war in Gaza, when I was writing certain things that were not so popular, people said, "Oh, you can't destroy the unity." And I said, "It's not unity. In 2 weeks, it's going to be gone."
Exactly.
And people, "No, you're a pessimist. Maybe this will last forever."
Wow.
Okay, maybe.
They know.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I agree. But the thing is that assimilation, we assimilate less. I'm not going to say no because I know a lot of people have.
Right, yeah, we assimilate less when we're not welcome into society. Fine. A lot of the things that are going around us beg for us to deal with the same problems that we refuse to deal with. So what do we do with gay couples? What do we do with somebody that has gay tendencies? We just say, "Oh, it's bad, so we're gonna what? What are we gonna do then?"
So what does the Torah
change people?
It's a great question.
What does the Halcha say about that?
Just because my set of rules, there's no such thing as a gay marriage, doesn't mean that there are no such thing as gay people.
Right.
It doesn't mean that gay people are bad.
Right.
It doesn't mean that gay people don't have rights to be people. It might mean that I don't believe that they should institutionally be recognized as married. Fine. That's why this country is a democracy. And you have the right to fight things out. But you can never use the Torah to justify your homophobia.
So
People have a problem with gay people. Fine, so have a problem with gay people. Don't tell me that the Torah told you to do that. The Torah has more of a problem with people who don't keep Shabbat. The Torah has more of a problem with people who don't keep kosher. The Torah has one problem with people who are gay, and 20 problems with people who speak Lashon Hara. If we go by the Torah has rules and values, and the Torah doesn't have just one rule. We're not Christians. Christians don't have laws. Christians, they decide that Christians don't keep the Old Testament. So why are they against gay people? You ever thought about the movement in this country of people who are fighting gay marriage are Christians? But you don't believe in the Torah. You don't keep Shabbat. They don't go to Jerusalem 3 times a year for the regal. They don't build Sukkot. They don't eat matzahs on Pesach. So why this commandment from the Old Testament they're adamant on keeping? Because they're homophobic, and that's why they decide to blame God for their feelings. Fine. They're not believers in the Bible. So now we Jews, we jump on the bandwagon with who? With the Christians. The same people who were killing us for 2,000 years. Now we're their best friends.
They come up.
You ever thought about it that way?
When you put it like, Shabbat is more important than...
Shabbat is much more important. It doesn't mean that being gay is okay. It just means that when you put things in perspective, Hashem has a way this world should look. So why are we tolerant to people who don't keep Shabbat? Because we believe that everybody has something to struggle with. Everybody has the option to not be perfect. Fine. So then somebody else has an option to also not be perfect in that department.
So
that doesn't mean that Hashem is happy with the way they choose to live their life.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that I have the right to persecute them, though.
Right. So then Halacha came up with solutions to different things, right?
Sometimes. Halacha hasn't come up with a solution for somebody who doesn't want to keep kosher. They're just sorry, so don't keep kosher, but that's your problem. It doesn't mean that I, as a rabbi, have to say, okay, I now let people not keep kosher in my shul. No, in my shul, you have to keep kosher. At your house, I'm not going to come and picket outside your house, and I'm not going to come riot outside your house. So when it comes to my community, I'll tell somebody, whatever sexual preferences you have, that's great. Don't bring it up in my synagogue. It's not, just like I don't talk about do whatever you do. Do it, but you're welcome in my shul, just like somebody who doesn't keep another part of the Torah is welcome in my shul. And so this country chooses what the definition of marriage is and isn't. Let them figure it out. Let them figure it out. This country says that people who are Jewish married to non-Jews are considered married. We don't think that's considered marriage. When's the last time we ever lobbied Congress that Jews and non-Jews shouldn't be married? So suddenly the gay people are going to get... Now that's our problem? Sometimes I wonder, where do we get our enthusiasm from?
Not knowing the Torah the way you do.
No, I'm not putting anybody down. Of course, if someone were to ask me a question,
You prioritize it, so it put it into perspective. Exactly.
50% of the Jewish community is marrying non-Jews. 50%. That means out of the next 10 million Jews that get married, 500,000 of them are going to marry non-Jews.
Yeah, but according
you
to
know what number
Halakha,
that is? According to Halakha, that's not a marriage. They're not married to each other.
But if the woman is Jewish, the kids are Jewish as well.
I didn't say that they're not Jewish, the kids.
Yeah.
But the couple isn't married. I wouldn't do their wedding. So why am I not lobbying Congress that they should say that Jews who come to marry non-Jews in downtown San Diego County office, they shouldn't be married? If you ask me, that's a bigger problem than the amount of Jewish people that are marrying same-sex spouses. But why are we much more vocal about this than we are about that?
Because it has been more common.
Because what's more common?
It has been more common during the history of Jews marrying non-Jews.
So now we're okay with it?
No, I'm not saying that. It's just that people are just as normal to things that should not be. But because you see it so much, and this is something new now.
It's the new noise. It's the new noise.
So we, instead of standing our ground on our values, we've decided to jump on the bandwagon of new noise.
Yeah, I think that's...
I'm asking you, somebody who is gay is violating halakha if they act in their gayness. Fine. But does that make them not Jewish?
No.
Does that make them not a good person?
No.
Can somebody who's gay not keep Shabbat and kosher and be a proud member of a Jewish community? Of course they can. So why do we choose those people we should have the board decides they don't want to have them in the synagogue. But I'm asking you, why is it that we're suddenly into this one?
Because one reason is because it's an issue that comes up in the United States of America. It's
so
not
is the
our
issue of people who don't keep Shabbat. But I venture to say that rabbis would be much quicker to speak about gay people than those who don't keep Shabbat, because their funding comes from people who don't keep Shabbat, not from gay people.
But in the country, that is an issue. The issue of Jews marrying non-Jews is not an issue in the country.
It's a huge issue. This is the biggest issue that faces the Jewish people here.
It's not an issue among everybody else.
Okay.
Not the country.
Yeah. So we're just becoming part of the whole bigger question rather than our own small questions that just have to do with us.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings in getting involved in governments that are not ours. I know that we as American citizens feel like we're citizens of this country, just like everybody else, and I respect that sentiment. But at the end of the day, the moment we allow any government, wherever it is, to have bad feelings toward any minority in society, for whatever reason, right or wrong, we're opening the door for such a government to also have feelings about us. Those same Christians that are lobbying for not gay rights in Washington also hate Jews. They also hate blacks and they hate Mexicans. They hate a whole bunch of people. So why am I helping them? If you were to ask me as a rabbi, in Jewish law, is there such a thing as gay marriage? Absolutely not. It's not something I have to take to a political level. I don't take it to...
You're very right, because, being Mexican, I feel very different. I used to feel very different in Mexico as a Mexican than in here, and I feel my kids are very different. Here, I remember when I was 14, I went to Canada, and my family in Canada was very observant. But my cousin, even though she was, doesn't matter, very Orthodox, very observant, she said, I'm first Canadian and then Jewish. Meaning, for her, Canada was before Israel. For me, Israel was before Mexico, and has always been, right? So, yeah, because and I see that in here as well. The people, the citizens, or the people in here, and I feel it myself, even though I'm not the citizen, But I've been living here for 20 years. I do feel that the country, the people feel much more identified with country than in other countries, and so I don't know you, but I don't feel that. But I feel that general feeling, not that I feel like that, but I feel that general feeling in the citizenship.
That what?
Regardless of that, American citizens, U.S. citizens, would feel very much identified with the U.S. citizenship.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Me as a Mexican, did not feel as identified as a Mexican citizen. I do in certain things, but not as involved in everything as. And I'm not saying.
I mean, as Americans feel in the American.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that is why also it brings up in the religion, because people feel more identified with the citizenship.
With what's happening in the
so
country.
the problems going into the citizenship in the government are more personal for even for Orthodox Jews.
Interesting.
But I mean, if you look actually at the European Jews, they definitely identify with where they came from.
Oh, well, yeah. But
What do you mean?
Until now.
What do you mean?
They identified. I mean, where they, whether Germany or Poland or Lithuania.
The Jews who live there now?
No, in when they bought Judaism the way it was, it's based on the custom that they picked up in the Galut.
Okay, like I identify very much with Moroccan Jewry, but
Right.
I don't identify with the government. I don't know anything about the government of Morocco. When Jews say that I identify with my Polish background, my Russian, my Hungarian background,
Right.
they're only talking about, meaning my Hungarian rabbis and the Hungarian Jewish community, not the Hungarian government, the Hungarian people, and
So
the
it's
Hungarian.
not the same. We're not
No, it's not the same thing
as identifying
with the American government. No, it's a very unique thing that you have a government finally that says Jews have an equal say in this government like anybody else does. That's a historic thing. It's only about 50 years old.
Right.
And even though they were in Europe for hundreds of years,
Right.
Yes.
Right.
people are not in the U.S. for hundreds of years yet. I mean, maybe 100, however.
Democracy has been here, has been a very good thing to the world. Also brought a lot of bad, but it's brought a lot of good to the world. Absolutely. And we have to, like I said, we're very proud to be American citizens. I just think that sometimes we have to be a little bit more modest with where we stick our head in. Especially if the general feeling of the country could be in a different direction.
So it's interesting. So here you are in a country that you are liberated, because it's the first time in history that you feel extremely liberated and free to live your religion also in kind of a free way. But because you are liberated, because you get the rights in the country as well, you kind of feel kind of you're part of that place, so you want to participate. And suddenly there's something that, they're fighting it and you joining.
I'm going to reiterate my point, because I felt very free as a Jew in Mexico.
You did.
Oh, definitely.
I did the same in South Africa.
Mexico, Mexico was a very good country to the Jews.
Yes.
When America wasn't willing to take immigrants from Europe during World War II, Mexico opened up its doors. Mexico didn't have a quota. Mexico didn't make people be sponsored. Just come on in. The only country that did that to the Jewish people.
You know how much they needed? Because my grandfather told me in 1925 he needed to have $200
To
come to the U.S.
to the US, so you needed money.
$200
You always did,
back
though.
in 1920.
Yeah, but it was so difficult to come to America. America was not letting in only quotas of European immigrants, and they were only letting in people who were being sponsored by other people who were already there.
Exactly.
When they knew what was going on in Europe. And so, when I see Jews, for example, who are, forget, I don't like Jews who are racist, and I don't like anybody who's a racist, but for example, issues of immigration, issues of all kinds of things. The Mexican government was a very good, I don't know how to, I haven't been to Mexico as a Jew, and it was a very good government to the Jewish people, and it deserves the credit of being a very good government to the Jewish people. Just like the Jews in South Africa. Also had a very positive experience as Jews in South Africa.
They didn't like us. They let us do whatever we wanted. They never objected to do anything. But they didn't like us.
They didn't open the borders. It was very difficult to get into South Africa.
That's true. Today, anyone
Right.
get into South
Well, and the South African Jewish community are most of the people who came from Europe.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, that's where they came from.
Yes.
They came from Europe to South Africa.
Yeah.
My grandfather came in 1897.
Really?
Yes.
My wife's family came to America in the 1860s.
Richard's parents.
They were here. My wife doesn't have family who's in the Holocaust. They're most. And for that's my wife's mother's side. My wife's father's side, my father-in-law. His family's been in Jerusalem. Could be since the 1700s.
Really?
They don't even really know where they're technically from. in Europe.
Well, they are
Maybe Hungary, maybe Russia, but they don't identify with that as their history. Right. Although this country is what we call, in Jewish theology, we'll call this country a Malchut Shel Chesed, a kingdom of kindness. It's been very kind to the Jews. We are not, the fact that you're able to walk to shul with a kippah on your head, wearing a talit, holding a lulav on that drug, I was thinking about it. That's an incredible thing. There are still places in the world where you can't do that. We have to be very grateful to the United States. And I think that part of being grateful is letting them make their own decisions. My opinion. You don't have to agree with my opinion. I believe that in Israel, you don't have the right to say, oh, let them make, Israel is your country, Israel doesn't have a choice. Israel must abide by the laws of the Jewish people. It's a Jewish country, if it is a Jewish country. And therefore you have the right to push your opinion into the Israeli government. But not here. I don't feel inclined to force my next door neighbors to abide by my religion.
But since we get the opportunity to participate in making a difference in the country, to me, for example, when I go to the votes and when I vote, which I know doesn't mean much, but if the person that I'm voting for want to know that has an influence in Israel versus not, so yeah, will influence.
That's your choice. You're allowed to do such a thing.
Because my priority in voting would be, towards the best for Israel.
It's unfortunate, by the way, that Israel has such a dependency on this country.
Yeah.
Right.
It's shifting.
It's the reason why we have so many problems in Israel. Anytime you're dependent on someone recently spoke to me, they want to get married. So how are you gonna do it? Financially, my in-laws are gonna support me. I said, listen, it's great that they are willing to support you. You don't know what it's gonna do to your marriage. You know what it's going to do to your marriage, that you can't make any decision you want because your mother-in-law will say, okay, so I won't pay your rent this month. It's great when things are going well. It's not great when things aren't going well. Oh, you want to go to your family for Pesach? But I want you to come here for Pesach. And if you won't, so forget about next month. And it sounds funny, but America does the same thing to us all the time. We want you to annex these territories or else we won't give you your whatever it is they give us. And it's a very silly thing.
Could we survive without being dependent?
Israel could survive without being dependent if Israel wanted to survive without being dependent. Because we're Jews, we like things at discounts. We like things that are easier to get. It's part of our nature. Israel's been around for 66 years now. Look what Israel's managed to do in 66 years. Israel has the ability to build its own economy. If Israel wanted to build its own economy. Israel doesn't want to build its own economy. Israel wants to rely on the economies around it to help it do whatever it wants to do.
Really?
It's like a druggie who gets a fix every year. They get a fix every week. So Israel's like a junkie. They come we need our U.S. aid fix. Why?
But right now their economy is shifting.
Well, after the war cost them plenty. It's in millions.
Oh yeah.
Right. But why? I mean, here you have the Jews that are really smart. Why are they are in need of being dependent on someone else?
Who knows?
I mean, history didn't prove that.
America didn't used to help us.
No, France did before.
That's my wife. One second. France helped us because America didn't want to. And now America helps us because France
doesn't want to. Right.
And now we're selling to Russia because Russia's taking it.
Also, China, we also face, we're trying to build a relation. But it's true, why? The question is why Israel is doing that?
Because it financially is working. Because it works financially.
It's easier when you have a loan versus if you just have to save by yourself. To work on someone else's money.
Exactly, but it's
and that's what we do.
It's because it's working.
His family.
I'll be back next Sunday.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Let's say that you have a provider. You have a store, and you usually buy your albums from this provider.
Somebody would give it to me on consignment.
And some of this provider is giving you a lot of conditions, and there's a lot of providers that will give you a different one.
Right.
It's just That's business. That's life.
But we are unique.
We definitely
We are not chosen people. We're unique and we're smart and we're all that.
Yeah.
So if we all that,
Technical
we're moving in
difficulties.
history depending
No, it's okay.
on other countries, can get us really far. While we're still doing it, we don't.
But I don't normally speak politics, but I feel that in this forum it won't be held against me.
It will not be held against you.
Yeah, the car didn't want to laugh.
Got it.
Should be the worst of your problems.
He heard you.
Not a problem.
Hanan heard you.
How are you?
You just got up.
I have a different question.
Yes.
Because you're coming.
Why? It's always the why.
Why?
I'll be back.
What's waiting?
Make sure the lights are
Why did God make a contract with Abraham on the male genitalia? Why? What's the importance of this act to have that contract with the Jewish nation?
That's a loaded question.
Before you answer the question, you have to understand what you're asking. Hashem says to do something. And you're going on an assumption that we can understand why it is that Hashem told us to do something. That assumption is incorrect. Why do we keep Shabbat? It may be because Hashem rested on the seventh day. Maybe it's not the reason why. Maybe. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? It could be that we eat matzah on Pesach because the Jews didn't have time to bake bread. It could be that that's only one of the million reasons Hashem gave us for why we eat matzah on Pesach. The same thing is true with this question. You have in Judaism certain thinkers that were called Moneh HaMitzvot, the counters of the mitzvot. You have in the Talmud says that there are 613 mitzvot in the Torah. The Talmud doesn't tell us what are the 613. And if you count the Torah, depending on how you count the mitzvot, you will find more or less than 613. And so the Rambam comes with a list and says, these are the 613 mitzvot. The Ramban says, okay, we agree on 600 out of the 613, but those 13, I think they go in a different order, I think they go in a different this and a different that. And you have different counters of the mitzvot over the generations. After the fad of counting mitzvot was over, you then had this fad of giving reasons for mitzvot. It was like, in the Jewish, today the fad is like Kabbalah, then it was giving reasons for mitzvot. So, the reasons for mitzvot are called ta'amei ha-mitzvot. Ta'amei ha-mitzvot, meaning a ta'am, a reason for the mitzvah. The truth is though that the word for reason in Hebrew is Siba.
That means like to taste.
Yeah, very nice. The reason why those who were giving reasons for the mitzvah chose the word ta'am and not the word siba, they chose the word taste and not the word reason, was because we believe that we can never fully grasp why we do a mitzvah. We can pick up tastes, like ideas of why we do the mitzvah, but the full reason, only Hashem knows why that's the way it is. And therefore, any of these things, it could be that one tam works for you and one tam is going to work for you. Just because the tam doesn't work for you doesn't mean the mitzvah goes out of effect. Because there's a siba that we don't know, a reason that we don't know. So here about Brit Milah is the same thing. Some suggest this notion that the reason why Hashem, if He wanted to create a being, why not just create it perfect? If you believe that a man should have a Brit, so why not just create it with the Brit? So some suggest that the reason for this is that Hashem wanted to show mankind that you are partners with me in perfecting the world. I don't create things perfect. I create things almost perfect, and your job is to finish that last step of creation. In which it gives the world a mission that is more than just, don't just live. You don't have the right to just live. You have the right to live and perfect this world. Just like when a baby is born, we have the right to live and perfect that baby. That's one. So why specifically there? Why not on his finger? I don't know. Why there? the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, in his Guide to the Perplexed, suggests that one of the things that destroys this world is not sexuality, but excessive sexuality. People who can do nothing more than be involved in promiscuous things and in lust and in desires, and it's for that reason they can't be faithful to one wife because they need 10 wives, because there are such problems that exist in the world. And the Rambam felt that what people complain about a Brit Milah is true. That someone without a Brit Milah could perhaps experience more pleasure than someone with a Brit Milah. But Hashem specifically wanted that. Pleasure, but not too much. To show that a person, you're not here just for that. You're here for more than that. And to show a purpose, that there's a greater purpose than that. Which could then beg the question, so why not a lady? It's an interesting question. It could perhaps fit into the Kabbalistic notion that ladies were created perfected.
Well, I've heard that it's the beginning of life, because it's the beginning of life, so that's why God is involved with the Jewish nation. So my question was, why not a female as well? Because the sperm by itself cannot create life without the egg. So I was just wondering.
It probably fits into the notion that a lady was created perfect as opposed to a man.
But the lady was created from the man. The man was a man, female. Female.
According to one opinion.
According to one opinion.
According to Pshat, man was just a man. And a woman was created from him.
Right.
According to some opinions, man had two sides to him, a male and a female side. Because how else would you explain the verse? Zachar u'nekeva baram. Hashem created man and woman together. So some of the rabbis understood together meaning together, and then they separated them.
But some is twins with male female.
Something like that. Rashi says more like front and back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a midrash that has a lot of depth to it. Why together? Why front and back? Why? According to the simple understanding of the Torah, man was created, and a lady was created from the man. A lady was, if you'd like to call it, a version 2.0. Like the new edition. Yeah? And it's for that reason that, according to Kabbalah, and it's a mistake, by the way. I speak about people not studying too much Kabbalah because they don't understand what they're talking about. I agree. But not studying any Kabbalah comes with its own problems of not understanding depth to certain things. There are different kinds of Kabbalah. Not all Kabbalah was created equal. Some Kabbalah is not for anyone to delve into. Some Kabbalah is useless. Most of the Kabbalah that people teach is useless. Because what does it actually mean to your life? So what if there are 10 worlds and 10 spheres and 10 dimensions? What does it have to do with you? You don't know how to put on your shoes in the morning. So why are you dealing with the 10 different worlds? But there is Kabbalah that has practical ramifications to our life. For example, ladies are adamant on counting Sfirat HaOmer. Yeah? So we must count Sfirat HaOmer every night to count Sfirat HaOmer. Okay. According to the Halcha, like we mentioned last week about Lulav and Etrog, would a lady be allowed to make a blessing on Sfirat HaOmer? Do you remember this discussion we had, Lulav and Etrog? According to last week, according to the Sfaradim, according to Maran and the Rambam, no. Because how would you say, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu was commanded? She wasn't commanded. According to Ashkenazim, Rabbi Yonatan, yes, she can. Because she's speaking in a general term, the Jewish people were commanded. This was from last week. Remember we had this discussion. The Ben Ish Chai says, forget halakha here on the side for a moment. He said, so let's say according to Maran, he would say a lady can count Sfirat HaOmer without a blessing. Fine. But says the Ben Ish Chai, don't you know why we count Sfirat HaOmer? You and I think we count Sfirat HaOmer. It's a countdown to Shavuot where we bring the Korban HaOmer from the second night of Pesach till Shavuot. Says the Ben Ish Chai, yes and no. Yes, that according to the Torah, that's the reason. According to the hidden Torah, everything that is Sfirat HaOmer it's called a tikkun. It's an act of rectification, a fixing for things that men did wrong in the world.
General? I mean, not general?
Mankind, yes.
Mankind.
Yeah, men, but not women.
Oh, okay.
And therefore, says the Ben Ish Chai, it would be improper for a lady to even count Sfirat HaOmer, because Sfirat HaOmer she didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
So why would she bother counting Sfirat HaOmer?
And the lulav and estrog are completely different.
And lulav and etrog is a different story. There are certain mitzvot that are connected to male and female attributes inside of Kabbalah. I'll give you an example. Can a lady wear a talit and tefillin?
Yes.
This is a question that's been plaguing the Jewish community for the last 150 years, and in recent years has even found its way into Orthodox society. So you have rabbis that they're fiddler on the roof rabbis. What fiddler on the roof is? Tradition? Everything's tradition. According to tradition, ladies don't wear talit and tefillin, so they can't wear talit and tefillin now, whatever they like. We don't change tradition. It's an interesting discussion, but it doesn't hold so much water in it. So what? So tradition changed many times over history. Why now it can't change? How come? Prove to me in Halcha that, okay, so some are of the opinion that in Halcha, once men are the only people who wear talitot for a certain amount of time, it becomes a man's clothing. And therefore a lady can't wear men's clothing. And that actually would be the opinion of the Rambam. The opinion of the Rambam is that a talit and tefillin, even though you'll find precedents in the Talmud where Michal, the daughter of Shaul, wore tefillin, it was an exception to the rule. And today there is no such tofa'ah, such occurrence, and therefore, it's not a good word. And therefore, a lady would not be allowed to wear talit and tefillin because of that.
Tradition?
Not tradition. It becomes a biblical prohibition, which is you cannot wear a man's clothing. You're not obligated, fine. But more than not obligated, now she's not allowed to, and that's fine. Okay. The Ben Ish Chai, when he addresses this whole topic, says, I don't understand. He says, lulav and etrog, I let ladies shake lulav and etrog. He says, sitting in a sukkah, I let ladies, all these mitzvot that are time bound, they can do them. Of course they can do them. He said, but don't you know that talit and tefillin have direct correlations to things in Kabbalah that only apply to women? And if a lady would be doing them, she's actually doing more damage than she's doing good.
They only apply to men.
Only apply to men, yes, thank you. It says the Ben Ish Chai, so if a lady comes to ask you if she can perform time-bound mitzvot, tell her yes, except for, and he lists a certain amount of mitzvot that are specifically connected to men.
Like learning Torah?
No. Learning Torah is a universal mitzvah.
Is it universal?
Absolutely. Like I said last week, remember I said last week? Hashem gave the Torah to the woman first?
That's right.
Yeah, I wasn't clear on that actually.
It says in the Torah, Hashem gave Torah to the ladies first.
Where did it say that?
In the Torah.
Where's the source of it?
It says in the Torah, Kot Tomur Levet Yaakov. Kot Tomur Tomar. My wife will know the pasuk by heart. Let me see.
This is in Shmot?
I'll tell you in a second.
Which accounts already.
And this is in Har Sinai?
Yes.
Shmot, 19th chapter,
Shmot?
19:3.
Thank you. What does it say?
Kot Tomar Levet Yaakov. Okay, Moshe ala el Elohim. Moshe goes up to God. Vayikra elav Adonai min hahar, and God calls out to him from the mountain, the Emor, saying, he's about to tell him the Torah. So this Kot Tomar Levet Yaakov. Go tell the house of Yaakov, v'tagid livnei Israel, and tell the children of Israel, and then he continues to tell them the whole Torah.
So
Our rabbis say, Ko tomar levet Yaakov,
Kotomar lebet Yaakov.
go tell Beit Yaakov, say our rabbis, Elu hanashim, these are the ladies.
That's what it says? Kotomar lebet Yaakov elu anashim?
Elu hanashim, what our rabbis understand Beit Yaakov to mean.
Ah, okay.
Emor lehen rashei dvarim, but tell them the head, the everything you're about to tell. V'tagidi b'nei Israel, elu anashim, these are the men. Our rabbis understand the reason Hashem doesn't repeat words. He doesn't just throw extra words into the Torah. Hashem doesn't say, go tell the children of Jacob and the children of Israel. That begs a question. Why are there two different people that he's talking
It's
to?
the same people, because
They're
Yaakov
not
was
the same.
Israel.
But Hashem doesn't repeat himself in the Torah. The rule of the Torah is that there is no word there that's extra. It's a rule in the Torah. If Hashem says, go tell Yaakov and Yisrael, those must be two different people. It cannot be the same. We speak repetitiously. Hashem doesn't.
So conclusion is, even though it says Bet, go tell
Bet Yaakov,
it's the
and then tell Bnei
Yaakov,
Yisrael,
which was 12 tribes of men.
No, but you're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. And we understand, according to that oral law, that Moshe Rabbeinu says, when Hashem told me Bet Yaakov, that meant the ladies. Hashem said, when Hashem told me Bnei Yisrael, that meant the men. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu told us. So who else are we going to believe for? It's not a tradition that came 1,000 years ago. Our rabbis say we received this tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu.
So this is Moshe Rabbeinu?
Yeah.
But this is in Talmud, right?
Yeah.
Where's the source in the Talmud that they translated? Bet Yaakov.
If you look in Rashi, he'll tell you where to go.
Rashi. Okay.
Rashi will tell you where to look.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So that being said,
Right.
learning Torah is a universal mitzvah. But when you learn Torah, Torah must be practical. You cannot learn impractical Torah.
Meaning?
Torah is a practical work.
You have to, it's a way of life. Is Torah a way of life?
Yes, but only if you study Torah that will change your life. There are parts of Torah that are not for you yet. For example, if you were to go study the laws of being a rabbinic judge, well, you didn't get there yet.
You're right.
So then you don't have an obligation to study those laws until you get there.
But regular, basic way of life.
I'm saying something, so you'll get... No, you'll understand. From what I'm saying, you'll understand the answer to your question.
Okay.
There are different parts of the Torah, Halcha, Tanakh, Kabbalah, whatever it's going to be. You have to study the parts that are most relevant to your life. Not that you like the most, it doesn't mean it's the most relevant. That are most relevant to your life. And therefore it could be that a lady who may in her life have less time to study. The nature of the world is that a lady is more responsible for her family than a man is. Nature of the world, not necessarily. There are exceptions to every rule. So Hashem says you have an obligation to study Torah, but first make sure you study the things you're going to need to know. A lady should be an expert in the laws of Shabbat, the laws of kosher, the laws of things that she is going to be dealing with all the time. If a lady were to sit down right now and study the laws of tefillin, she's allowed to study the laws of tefillin, but it's not relevant to her everyday life. Just like a man has an obligation to know different halachot. But if you were to study the laws of lighting candles, or the laws of taking truma from the challah, or so on and so forth, he's allowed to study that. But only once he's studied everything that he needs to know. So, learning Torah is universal. What to study from the Torah is depending on who you are. A child doesn't have to study the laws of marriage. A married person better know the laws of so on and so forth. Torah is it's universal, but there are different parts that are for different people.
As a mother, and you've got both kids, you've got boys and girls, if the mother doesn't know the law of tefillin, how can she teach her?
Generally, the mother doesn't teach her child. My mom didn't teach me how to put on tefillin. My father taught me to put on tefillin. That's why I have a dad. My mother could learn the laws of tefillin. She knows about tefillin. She just doesn't do it. So why would she be the one to teach me? You're right. In a home, let's say, where there's only a mother, yeah, she has to learn more now. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
How do we get there? Certain mitzvot. So there are certain mitzvot that if a person doesn't study the depth, the Kabbalah behind the mitzvah, they can make some very big mistakes when it comes to teaching halakha to people. And what I see today is, because so many people are shoving the wrong kind of Kabbalah down people's throat, there has been a rejection of Kabbalistic theology from Orthodoxy. And that's I understand where it's coming from. But they also threw the baby out with the bathwater. There is an entire realm of what I would call, it may sound like a contradictory term, halachic Kabbalah. Halachic Kabbalah. And they threw that also out with the bathwater. And it's a mistake. And someone who doesn't study both will make mistakes. Like a rabbi who'll tell a lady to put on tefillin because it's okay. That means he knows halakha, but he doesn't know anything about Kabbalah. That's a problem. That's it.
It's interesting that you're explaining it the way you're explaining it. What I'm finding out sometimes when so here we need to study what we need to study. Is it true also to rabbis to study only what they think they need to study? Because I find when I ask questions sometimes that I get an answer of more I don't know, and therefore I don't get the answer, and when I find out the answer, then they find out that there is an answer. So my question is, just like we as regular people, studying the Torah according to what we need, do rabbi only learn what they need for their community, or do they learn the Torah from the source to be able to explain whatever questions comes along? In other words, the knowledge is there, but not only. No, it happened to me. To me where
I
I
understand
must.
what you're saying.
Yeah, and I find that I get an
That's
answer
not
that I
what
don't
they should
know.
do. It's like a professor.
But they have smicha.
Yeah, but it's like a professor. A rabbi.
Not talking about specializing about certain things.
Exactly.
General.
Exactly. And let's say it's a molecular biology professor. Just to make it very precise. Yeah?
Right.
They should know biology in general.
Correct.
And many times they would only answer you in their specific area. That doesn't mean it's right. A rabbi.
So that's my question.
Should be, and I'm
And
sorry to say that.
that's my question.
But like Rabbi Yoni, and this is one thing I admire from you.
Correct.
Keeps himself updated and reading, and some rabbis, I don't think they do. I think they focus on their
Thank you. And that's my question, because it makes sense for us, people, to concentrate on whatever we need to, continue with learning Torah. But as rabbis, as teachers, do rabbis need to know everything from the beginning, or just into the community that they are involved with their own tradition?
We spoke about this on Shabbat at my shul. And if I could write an article about this one day, I would, but it's going to offend too many people, so I might not do it yet. But I spoke about it here before. We spoke about it when we were discussing titles. Remember titles of rabbis?
Yes.
Not all rabbis are created equal. And it's a fallacy when we don't tell people what kind of rabbi are we. Someone asked me questions about organ donation. So I gave a whole discussion about yes, no, for, against. I said, but at the end of the day, I'm not the one who's going to make the decision here. This decision is above my pay grade. And so there are rabbis who are considered leaders of the whole Jewish people, and they'll make that decision for the people. I can give my opinion, but I'm not going to be the one to make the decision. That's above my pay grade.
Honest.
Now, unfortunately, most people don't challenge rabbis enough to ever reach the point where rabbi says, I don't know something. Or a mistake is made of you said something, you continue studying. When you graduate with smicha, that's not the last time you ever study. When a doctor finishes their medical license, if they don't stay on top of medicine, they're going they're not going to be a doctor in the cutting edge of it. They can even make life. They have to go. Now, I don't know that you could practically put such a system in play for rabbis.
No, it's exactly the opposite.
Right?
It's going backwards, not going forward.
No, I'm not saying just keeping current, but Shimmy's bug passed on to you? Yeah. But extended study is that you don't seem to find that so much. When a person receives ordination, so let's say it takes a person X amount of time to become a rabbi. That's fine. And if one rabbi decides it takes 10 months to give a person smicha, it's unfortunate that it exists, but fine. If one rabbi says it takes 7 years to give a person smicha, fine, so that's what it takes. But what does a person need to know in order to even start studying to be a rabbi? What you find is many American rabbis, they don't need to know so much when they start. And there's only so much you can teach somebody in the amount of time they're studying to be a rabbi. So when I went to study to be a rabbi, I studied about kashrut, I studied about family purity, I studied about Shabbat, I studied about weddings, I studied about mourning, all kinds of things that people need to know as rabbis. they didn't teach me Tanakh. You were expected that when you come into the smicha program, you know, at least on the basic level, things that happened in Jewish history. They didn't teach me Jewish history. You're expected to know those things. When they didn't teach me about Jewish philosophy, that's something you expect to learn while, during, before, after, so on and so forth. They don't give you tests on everything. And part of getting smicha is the rabbi who gives you smicha is supposed to know you well enough to say, okay, this is the point where I feel comfortable saying, you're a self-sufficient rabbi, and I trust that you'll continue studying and know more. What happens today is that most people don't have a rabbi. You hear me talk about Rav Peretz a lot. I just got a picture now of myself and Rav Peretz. How often do you hear your rabbis talk about their rabbi? Which begs not their rabbi, for example, if someone's part of the Stoliner Hasidic group, and they quote the Stoliner Rebbe a lot, as much as he's their Rebbe, it's not their rabbi. The Stoliner Rebbe didn't teach them in class. The Stoliner Rebbe didn't go for them with walks. Their rabbi is their personal. How often do you hear them quote their rabbi? What that means is that the person who gave them smicha was probably some anonymous person who gave them a test on a certain material and signed a certificate for them, which is wonderful. That makes them a rabbi. But what sets them aside from other rabbis is that they don't have someone to continue learning from. I learn from Rav Peretz about twice a week. I listen to his classes being recorded. I have a student that records Halevy Morris, should be memory for good things. He sends me twice a week Rabbi Peretz's classes from Jerusalem. I call Rav Peretz at least once every 2 weeks with personal questions that I have. Baruch Hashem, I have books, and now life gets difficult. The rabbi, high holidays, children, wife, all kinds of things that take up time. But that library doesn't dwindle; it grows, Baruch Hashem, as I try to grow. And I don't know everything. I definitely don't even know half of everything. I don't know a quarter of everything. But I expect myself that over my lifetime, I should know more and more and more. Not all my colleagues are the same way. There are colleagues of mine that know more than me, and therefore I call them up when I have questions. But most of the rabbis that I see around me are people who finished school, and that's it. And they learned a little bit, things that they had to discover when they were practical rabbinics. But are they innovative in their halacha? Do they think outside of the box in Jewish philosophy? Are they willing to push the boundaries of interpretations on Tanakh, so on and so forth? The answer to the question is no. And the reason is no, because they're very afraid. Because they don't have someone who's going to keep them in check. And so they're afraid to know more, because knowing more is dangerous. And Baruch Hashem, I'm not afraid, because I have a rabbi who keeps me in check. And I'm in very close touch with that rabbi. And so when I say not all rabbis are created equal, how many of those rabbis are continuing the legacy of somebody else, who's continuing the legacy of someone else, who's continuing the legacy of Moshe Rabbeinu? And how many of them are just people with a certification that gives them a title of rabbi? And that is always going to set aside rabbis from rabbis.
That's my question.
What happened to your voice, Avram?
Yeah,
she doesn't know either.
We threatened her. Stop fighting with Richard.
This is the level of notification of people speaker, and there is another one, domain
Dayanut.
of speaker. So many rabbis not only get speaker, but they then want to be better and study more to get that higher level.
Sure.
Now, I was under the impression, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, that people who wanted to run a congregation or wanted to work in a congregation had to have the higher level of smicha, not the lower level. Because the lower level is, you still have so much to learn. Not that the higher level would be the truth.
But that higher level also doesn't encompass anything of Jewish knowledge. What it encompasses are very technical areas of Jewish law. Somebody with a Dayanut Smicha doesn't know more than somebody else about kosher or about Shabbat they just know now about the laws of money and how to run a court. So that's irrelevant when it comes to being a rabbi of a community. Most rabbis' communities don't run court cases out of their office, right? And so that's definitely not a requirement. What I'm saying is, even on that level, how many people are perpetuating or they're continuing a legacy of traditional rabbi student from Moshe Rabbeinu, and how many of them are really just part of a system or part of a group or part of a certification program or part of whatever else it is that as a factory makes more and more rabbis that you lose count of who those people are.
Is it more common nowadays, or was the same back
No, this is a very new thing.
It is a new thing.
It's a very new thing.
See, because I was under the impression.
For example, my uncle in Israel, Big Talmid Chacham, he has smicha from the chief rabbinate of Israel, which means that on his certificate is signed, I think it was Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu and Rabbi Avram Shapir, I think, or Rabbi Obadiah Yosef and Rabbi Goren. I don't remember which one it was. Okay, one of the two chief rabbis. He doesn't know the chief rabbis. He took tests, standardized tests. The chief rabbis hired a board to grade the tests, and if you pass with a certain grade, so you get a certificate. And that's how it works in Israel. And that's considered the highest level of smicha in the whole world.
Wow.
Now, my uncle has a Rabbi Zini, who he studied from since he was in the army, since he was 20. And he's still studying by. My uncle is now almost 50 years old. Still studying by. Somebody who this rabbi is the chief, he's a rabbi doctor, he's the chief rabbi of the Technion, Israel's University of Technology, right in Haifa. He's the rabbi of that neighborhood in Haifa. He's not my style, he's a big Talmid Chacham though. And I always tell him, why do you choose to have smicha from the chief rabbinate as opposed to smicha from your rabbi? And he said, because smicha from my rabbi will get me nowhere in the rabbinic world. Whereas smicha from the chief rabbis will get me a job, will get me a career, will get me so on and so forth.
So it's the same as somebody graduating from Harvard.
Absolutely. Exactly. I would rather someone graduate from Harvard, from a community college, but has a professor that they're a student of, than somebody who graduates from Harvard just because that's the name of the school. But Judaism has become like this today.
How was before Israel? How was, in Europe or in...
You had to have... So in Europe, by the way, this already started. In Europe it started correspondence smichas.
Oh.
You had people who needed a job. I'll tell you. Yeah, you had a job. Someone needed a job as a Talmid Chacham, so he received smicha. By who? By whatever rabbi he could find that would give him smicha. But the real way this worked, and also in Europe, was that a rabbi had a student, and that student received smicha, and that student gave smicha, and so on and so on. But one rabbi.
When they were living in the yeshiva and studying in the yeshiva.
And also when they left the yeshiva, that was their rabbi. That was their rabbi. Mentor, their teacher. You had a different thing, like in Sephardic countries, also in Ashkenazi countries. Not everybody actually had smicha. Some people were chachamim without smicha. Yeah. What that meant was that the community saw them on a certain level where they were already able to teach and lead and guide. And that also started a little bit of what we have today, that being a rabbi doesn't mean one who gives halachic decisions, but one who can run a community, or one who can teach in a school, or one who can do so. Both of those were precedents to the situation today. And what I'm saying is, I will respect a rabbi who has a certification, they're a rabbi like everyone else is a rabbi. I'm not taking it away from them. But one of my expectations from them, I don't expect them to have an approach, a direction, because they didn't get it from anybody. They just took tests. So those tests are considered on the street to be more important than someone else's test. Fine. I'm not a snob here about tests. But at the end of the day, when you say, so why don't they, or why do they, or what? Practically, because their Torah ended in 19 whenever when they got smicha, and this person's, and you'll find that someone who has a rabbi will always continue, and not always will you find it the other way around.
I was under the impression that it is, rabbis through rabbi.
There are many rabbis out there.
Right.
For example, when I was in Israel, I married the study. He wasn't my rabbi. I saw him give classes, and so I used to ask him questions. Rabbi Ziegler. Now, Rabbi Ziegler doesn't. If you would see him, you wouldn't think he's a rabbi. I think he's like an old grandfather. He walks down the street with a little goatee and a leather jacket. And Rabbi Ziegler, though, is one of the primary students of Rabbi Soloveitchik. Rabbi Yosef, he made Aliyah to Israel, where he teaches like a small group of students, smicha, things like that. And he actually is the author of 6 volumes of halachic works from Rabbi Soloveitchik. He's one of the experts. If you say, what was Rabbi Soloveitchik's opinion on doing X, Y, or Z? He can write a book on that topic, because he spent his whole life studying by Rabbi Soloveitchik. So when this rabbi teaches, he's not just another guy with a certificate. I consider him to be much more with it than somebody else who may have been more mainstream or more famous, because he's actually continuing. Rabbi Soloveitchik is not his own person. Rabbi Soloveitchik studied by his father and his grandfather, Rabbi Chaim of Brisk, Rabbi so on and so forth. That's what you're looking for when you look. And so it doesn't mean to reject everybody else. What it means is just don't have your expectations to be the same by everybody.
I appreciate your explanation because you made me understand something.
What I'm saying is it should never be used to reject somebody, but only who to understand more. Why does it you find X more by Y? I'm happy to say that the students of Rabbi Peretz that I consider my colleagues, we feel very lonely in the world, but also very happy to be Rabbi Peretz's students. We feel very lonely because we're few and far in between, and we only understand each other. We don't really understand what's going on. I was telling my wife, most of the problems that plague Orthodoxy and Orthodox theology don't even come into our discussions because we don't. Thank God, our rabbi was always one step ahead of the game in that department. And when we see other people, so we kind of like, good for you, we're happy you're a rabbi. But sometimes we'll say we're very proud that we're our rabbi students. Meaning, if someone asked me, would you rather get smicha from Rabbi Yavad Yosef or from Rabbi Peretz? I would still say from Rabbi Peretz. Rabbi Yavad Yosef is more famous. Maybe get farther in the world if I had smicha from Rabbi Ovadia, but he wasn't my rabbi. I don't know him. Which is why recently someone had a discussion with me at the synagogue. Said, Rabbi Yoni, you're doing something wrong. You're Sephardic, and Rabbi Yavad Yosef said you can't do da 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 da. And he was an Ashkenazi person. But most Ashkenazi people, not all, most Ashkenazi people are under the impression that the only Sephardic rabbi who ever lived was Rabbi Yavad Yosef. And so I said, with all due respect, I have, look, those two shelves, all those red books on the left-hand side, those are all Rabbi Yavad Yosef's books.
Wow.
I study them day and night. I'm not a student of Rabbi Yavad Yosef, though. And so I said, we don't follow Rabbi Yavad Yosef. He looked at me and almost fell out of his chair, like, what do you mean, you're not Sephardic? I said, no, I have my rabbi whose tradition I continue, and I'm okay with following Rabbi Yavad Yosef when it makes sense to our, but not. And he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that maybe you could follow something else. And that was because he doesn't understand that there's a beauty to tradition. When people speak about tradition, it doesn't mean that my grandfather, walked around in circles 3 times and that's a tradition. Tradition means that you received a certain approach in thinking, in learning and studying and praying and theology from your rabbi, and you continue that to the world. That's what tradition means. And that's why I would choose Rabbi Peretz 100 times over again, over anybody else.
That makes sense.
Alright, everyone have a beautiful day.